Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday, TGIF. And what's going on? This is NYG Jeffy T 3285. And for Friday this morning, I'm just going to give a quick little update going around all the news surrounding the New York Mets. Starting with some of the fun news. Now, there's recently been doing a poll of some of the players that are going to be named the finalists to make their All Star team for their certain positions. And the New York Mets have two representatives that have been named finalists to make the 2022 All Star Game this year, and that's first baseman slash DH Pete Alonso, as well as outfielder Starling Marte. Both guys are having great seasons so far this year, and both are very well deserved. But a couple of guys I would throw in there that should have been in consideration, but unfortunately did not get the nod. A guy like Jeff McNeil, who's been having a bounce back season so far this year. I know he got hurt recently with the hamstring injury, but he's a guy that has deserved to get a chance to be an all-star this year. And I don't understand why he's not being considered as one of the finalists to make the All-Star Game this year. And even especially since the guy that's ahead of him that's being voted in, Ozzie Albies, he's pretty much been hurt for the past couple of weeks. So Jeff McNeil is definitely a guy that should be considered an all-star. And another guy that should be in there is Francisco Lindor, who's just had a very good season. After a very, very rough 2021 season, Francisco Lindor has bounced back to a very solid 2022 season so far. So that's another guy that should have been named at least a finalist, but we know it's a fan voting type thing. So the fans are responsible for why these are happening, but I would say Francisco Lindor as well as Jeff McNeil should be considered finalists. But congratulations to Pete Alonso and Starling Marte for being named finalists to make the National League 2022 All-Star team. Now, some other news and notes is that Max Scherzer pitched another game in the bullpen, and he looks like he's on track to make his return to the Mets rotation within the next 7 to 10 days, maybe even sooner than that. That's going to be a huge boost for the Mets rotation since they've been struggling lately with Chris Bassett pitching over a 4 ERA right now. Carlos Carrasco struggling with back issues and as well as been dealing with, he's been very inconsistent with his ERA. Taijuan Walker's been pitching well. We all know what happened with Tyler McGill, who is injured right now with a shoulder injury, and he will not be back until mid-August as he was placed on the 60-day IL recently while he's dealing with a shoulder issue. So right now you could say that it's going to be a big boost to get Scherzer back, and even Jacob DeGrom, that if everything goes right, Jacob DeGrom it might be scheduled for a rehab assignment this coming Sunday. So it looks like Jacob DeGrom, if he gets at least 3 or 4 rehab assignments in there, DeGrom could be on his way back, and it should be on track to be pitching back in the starting rotation for the New York Mets right after the All-Star Game. Now, I'm going to talk about some of the recent trade rumors that have been going around for the New York Mets and some guys that they can try to acquire this offseason. And it's no secret right now that the New York Mets have been looking for some offensive help as they've been not getting really any contributions at all from the third base position, from the DH position, and from the catching position. Now, we know James McCann just recently returned from his injury, but he's been a guy that's not really been putting up the type of numbers that the New York Mets have been hoping for at the catching position. So there's been a couple of rumors that the New York Mets might be interested in Contreras, the catcher from the Cubs, or Contreras. So the New York Mets might be interested in Wilson Contreras from the Cubs. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, he's been a good player for a while, but at the same time, you get a big-time catching prospect in Francisco Alvarez, and I don't know if I want to bring in a guy like Contreras unless it's just going to be a stopgap for a year or two until Alvarez is ready to come up. So that's one guy you hear about. Another guy that's just been talked about is Trey Mancini from Baltimore. As Baltimore has been clearly looking like a team that's been in a rebuild mode this whole time, just bringing up young players. And Mancini has been there for a while. Maybe the New York Mets can bring him in as their potential long-term, or a potential guy that can come in as the DH. Because they're not getting anything right now from Dom Smith nor J.D. Davis in terms of sustained success. So you might be able to bring in a guy like Trey Mancini for maybe a lower-end prospect or two that can come in and be your consistent DH. He's not been putting up the incredible power numbers. I mean, he's got 7 home runs, 30 RBIs, 14 doubles, has an OPS of 777. So, I mean, he's a good hitter, but he's not going to be a guy that right now is providing the power that you're looking for from the DH position. but at least he's a guy that you can expect can at least be a consistent hitter going forward for the Mets and get at least better production from the DH position that you've been getting from Dom Smith and from J.D. Davis. And another guy that's been talked about a lot that could be brought in is another guy that can be brought in is even a guy like J.D. Martinez, another guy that's been a target for the New York Mets as well. But with Boston making a resurgence right now in their season, I don't think they're going to be wanting to part with J.D. Davis or J.D. Martinez as they're they seem like they've been righted the ship and they want to look to maybe make a playoff spot or a wild card this year. So I think J.D. Martinez is off the table. You can even dip into the minor leagues for a couple of Mets prospects that have been hitting very well lately, and that's Brent Baty, the third baseman, and as well as Mark Vientos. Vientos even went back-to-back with a couple of home runs, and he's been hitting 8 home runs recently in the minor leagues for Double-A Syracuse. So Vientos and Baty are a couple of guys, if you want to dip into the minor league system, that you can look to call up and maybe fill the position at DH and maybe even third bases. Even a guy like Eduardo Escobar has been struggling, and it wouldn't hurt to give these two guys a look for the New York Mets and see if they can provide some type of spark, a la what a guy like Marco Conforto did for the 2015 team when he helped them out, send them to the playoffs and even towards the World Series, as he was a spark plug for that team. So maybe you can ask like Brent Baty and Mark Vientos if they could do that. But that's just some news and notes going around the New York Mets recently about some injury news going around that Jacob DeGrom and Max Scherzer look to be on track to making the return either right before or just right after the All-Star break. A couple of rumored guys that might be coming to the New York Mets, like J.D. Martinez and especially Trey Mancini, a couple of trade targets they've been looking at. Also Wilson Contreras from the Cubs, to fill in some of those holes that the New York Mets are having with our lineup has been struggling. And even some prospect that they could look to bring up to help out the struggling lineup as well. And without having to give up any of these prospects, you can give some of these guys a look. So thank you very much. I hope everybody enjoys your Friday morning, afternoon, and evening. If you like the video, please hit the like button below. Subscribe if you haven't already to NYG Jeffy T 3285 for more breaking news and updates and chatter surrounding the New York Mets. And leave a comment below on what you think the New York Mets should do around the trade deadline. What players you would like to see them acquire, and if not acquire a player, but what players in the minor leagues you'd like to see them bring up. And see if they can provide a spark for this New York Mets team going forward. So thank you very much. I hope everybody enjoys your Friday. Everybody gets ready for a very important weekend. Let's see what the New York Mets can do for the remaining games going into the All-Star break. And let's hope and see that maybe a guy like Jeff McNeil and Francisco Lindor will be able to make at least a reserve role for the All-Star game, as Pete Alonso looks like a surefire starter, and even Starling Marte looks like he can make the All-Star team too. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your Friday, and remember, let's go New York Mets. Metropolitans all the way.